Hey, what's up, y'all? I'm here with my good friend and co-host, fellow certified financial planner practitioner. Man, it's a mouthful.
Woo.
Marshall's here with me.
What's up, buddy?
Hey, Marshall, we're going to be having a conversation about retirement income, and this is an article that we're spotlighting today because it was in our weekend reading for retirees email series.
Is it an article or is it a thesis?
It's
or
basically
like a white paper.
A white paper,
Yeah,
I
there
would
you go.
say. My assistant said she was looking at this article and she emailed it rather than printing it, which she usually does. And she said, I'm not going to waste all that paper, right? She said, you got a good article
It's a thick boy.
when you have an index that pertains to the article, right? And you do. So we're going to try to break this article down simply for you here today. If you'd like to receive this article and an email from us every single Friday on 4 articles on trending topics in the financial planning space like this one, investment planning, income planning, estate planning, tax planning, anything that might be trending right now to help you make a better decision, as well as getting special event invites to webinars, live events. We'll have book giveaways in there, white papers, and so much more. All you have to do is text us, WR, to 866-482-9559. So let's get in this article.
Woo! I can hear the excitement in your voice. I knew it was going to be a good one when it got emailed to me, but I also knew it was going to be real good because it was from our good buddy over there, Michael Kitcey's Nerd's Eye View, and
authored by
Mr. Wade Fowl.
Doctor.
Love it.
Dr.
Oh,
Wade
yeah, I left
Fowl.
out the doctor.
Yeah, well,
2 times over.
Yeah, he doesn't have that big of an ego, so he can handle that. He's been on the podcast a couple times. If you want to go back and listen to some more Wade Fowl research, which is just top-notch. These are some of our top-performing podcasts with thousands of downloads. Check out episode 11 on reverse mortgages, episode 121 on the safety-first approach to retirement income planning. He's a professor of retirement income, also lead retirement researcher at Retirement Researcher, and I love his research. And this one in particular just hit a darn home run. This is taking all of the research that he's been doing for years and years and years and really putting it into practice for the consumer, for the client, for the potential client, for an individual. And for the advisor and for the firm. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm looking forward to incorporating this software ultimately into our process once it becomes available.
And why? I always start with why. Why is this an important topic? Why is this an important article? Number one, retirement planning is very important these days because we don't have pensions like we once did.
Right.
We talk about the generation like my grandparents who stepped into retirement. They each had a pension. They both had Social Security. My grandparents, Doris and Harvey, had 5 paychecks coming in the door every month. They didn't need a retirement income plan. They didn't actually need to save anything for their retirement because pension and Social Security took care of it. Now we've got a whole different generation. Pensions have largely gone away. Only about 15% of people retiring each and every year have a pension. So we need a plan and we need a strategy, and people are living longer and longer lifetimes.
Another reason this is really important right now in the advisor space for advisory firms themselves, for firms like ourselves, we've been adhering to a fiduciary standard due to just our registration, for over a decade, but also the brokerage industry, the wide variety of advisors that are out there that are brokers, most are, they are falling under a best interest standard now, not a fiduciary standard, or a best interest standard. They have to operate in the best interest of their client. It's really more of a disclosure standard, but this can really help the advisor ensure that they're providing the client not just the right investments and tools, but the right strategy from a high level that fits their best interests. I think there's a lot of value here for the consumer and for the advisor today. It kicks off with something I just love, and that is that life is not optimized on a spreadsheet, but rather by pursuing personal aspirations. And I'm going, hey, Fowl's about the biggest nerd I know. Affectionately. But someone like this, it's all data-driven and number-driven, is going, hey, it's not all about the spreadsheet.
Right.
We have to also pay attention to your own personal preferences and aspirations. And most advice has been delivered historically by a spreadsheet, essentially, by a piece of software saying, hey, this is the best way to invest, or this is the best way to allocate your life savings.
Optimize a portfolio, right? It's what I tell my clients all the time. It's like, I need to understand the textbook, but your life is not going to fit perfectly into that textbook. We got to marry those two things. And your life is all about your your preferences, what brings you passion and meaning. How do you drive more of this to your life?
Yeah, and if you think about it throughout your working life, in your early years, I meet young people all the time in their 20s and 30s, they're obsessed with getting a higher return. They go, oh, maybe if I put some money in Bitcoin or Ethereum, maybe I should put some money in small cap stocks or buy some Apple stock or Amazon stock. They're so obsessed with getting these little returns, not realizing that that's about the smallest lever that a young individual has in their life, is making a better investment. The biggest lever a young individual has is actually making a better decision around their career. What are you going to do to earn dollars? How do you earn more year after year? So it's going to be making sure you're leveraging your human capital to earn a living.
Yes.
That's your biggest lever as an individual when you're younger. But then if you can take that to the next level and base that on your own personal preferences, your values, what delivers purpose and meaning to your life, then you can have more longevity in that career. You can make a bigger impact. I believe the more value you provide in the world, the bigger return that you're going to have, and you're going to provide more value when you're more passionate about something. You're going to do it for a longer period of time, and you're going to have personal fulfillment. The same thing is true in retirement planning.
Right.
If your retirement strategy is not just sound from a technical standpoint, but is also in line with your personal preferences, your values, where you find purpose and meaning in life, then it's going to be that much more impactful and fulfilling for you.
Right, and you're going to have much more commitment, right? You're going to be empowered by that financial plan, and that's truly what an advisor's hopefully after, right? Empowering individuals with education, giving them the choices and the options, and understanding that there is no one way to skin a cat, right? There's no silver bullet, but what Wade Pfau's done here is he's tried to organize this around these tendencies, and the results are fascinating.
Yeah, so he kicks off, says, hey, there's a lot of ways to plan for retirement, right? There are countless approaches to retirement income planning. There are 4 broad approaches, though. And these 4 broad approaches start with the one that's most commonly sold and used today. And I'll tell you exactly why I said sold here in a little bit, because the article goes into that, which is total return. This is basically taking your traditional investment portfolio, a mix of stocks and bonds, and just taking periodic distributions to satisfy your income needs.
4% withdrawal.
4% withdrawal rule would fall into that category.
Throw it in a 60-40, take 4%. Boom.
Yeah, play the odds. Number 2 is income protection, where you're building a lifetime income floor, in this case with a simple income annuity. So you have an income guarantee that's maybe taking care of those non-discretionary expenses. Maybe you're satisfying your discretionary expenses with something from the portfolio or something along those lines. Then you have risk wrap. Risk wrap is one that is pretty interesting, and one that I do want to go into a little bit more, but that's really a lifetime income floor with deferred annuities offering a lifetime withdrawal benefits wrapped around a risk-based portfolio. What do I mean?
Still got some upside.
This would be a variable annuity or a fixed indexed annuity with an income guarantee attached to it. So you're hoping that the market performs and you do better than the income guarantee, but if the market doesn't perform, it goes down for 10 years in a row, you can still kick on that income guarantee and take care of all your income needs in retirement. Then you have time segmentation. This is a bucket strategy, right? You're using less volatile or less risky assets for those short-term expenses and riskier assets for those longer-term expenses, those future expenses. You might use a higher growth potential. So maybe we're using cash or bonds up front. We're using equities for something we're not going to touch for some time into the future.
Yeah, and if you're listening to this podcast and it sounds a little confusing, please download the article. It's fantastic, and he lays it out. Wade Pfau lays it out very well with this matrix, kind of what Casey was just going through. It really makes a little more sense when you've got some of the visuals, but it's
and you
fantastic.
can get that. It's right there in the show notes at retirewithpurpose.com. So there were 6 styles that were identified, and there's 2 really strong constructs that came out of that. And you've probably heard of at least one of these in the past if you've been listening to the podcast for a while. The probability-based versus the safety-first approach.
Yep.
And then the optionality versus the commitment orientation. And what we're trying to get out of this is a retirement income style awareness profile, or a RISSA profile, your preferences for how you desire to source your retirement income. So we want to determine your preferences around probability versus safety, optionality versus commitment, and then that'll help us dial in which one of these 4 strategies is going to best fit your own personal situation.
Right. And also your spouse too, because they may have different views on this. But let's just take it one at a time. Probability versus safety, right?
So the probability-based retirement income sources are dependent on the potential for market growth, right? They will provide a continuous and sustainable retirement income stream as long as the market performs as it has in the past in the majority of situations. These are your traditional diversified investment portfolios. I think, simply put, market returns are not guaranteed. Some retirees are comfortable taking on that probabilistic bet, right? The majority of the time, the market performs well over long periods of time. You just wouldn't want to retire at the wrong time and get your timing wrong, but you say, I'm willing to play those odds.
And my favorite question for that is, what would bother you more? You opened up your statement and you see that the market went up 20% and maybe you only made 9%? Or you opened up your statement and see that you lost 20% of your retirement assets. Which one of those would bother you more? Somebody that misses out on some of the upside, they like the probability approach. Somebody that's just worried about that 20% loss, they're gonna land in that safety first side.
And as we go through this, think about which one of these individuals you are, and we're going to put it together towards the end. So we have probability-based, then we have safety first. So the safety first retirement income sources are incorporating some contractual obligations to better secure safety of those income sources. Think defined benefit pensions, annuities with lifetime income protections, maybe government bonds that are being held to maturity for that matter. And if you fall into this category, you're probably willing to give up a little upside potential for the safety of that contractual guarantee.
Yes, summed it up perfect.
Then we have optionality versus commitment. So now maybe you have it dialed in. Are you safety first? Are you probability first? Now, are you optionality oriented or commitment oriented? If you're optionality oriented, that's a preference for keeping one's options open and a desire to maintain flexibility. We like to be flexible. If
like to have options.
If we're commitment oriented, that's the opposite, right? We have a preference for committing to one solution. Marshall's not commitment oriented.
I know where I fall.
He likes his options.
I like to keep my options open, and I don't want to be locked into certain strategies. So I know that I'm going to be in the top half of this segment.
That's good. Let's just leave it there. I would love to go down a rabbit hole with you there on commitment.
It's a different podcast.
Then there's also the satisfaction from planning in advance and not leaving difficult decisions for later. So when we're making this commitment, we're going, hey, I like to make a commitment to this strategy because I don't want to have to make decisions every year or year after year, especially at some point down the road when your ability to make the decision might be hampered by stress or cognitive decline, for that matter.
And I think that makes sense. And to be fair, you could start in one segment and then rotate, if possible, down to a lower segment. There's nothing to say you can't change your plan down the road if it's still feasible. But I really like how those two things are polar opposite, right? It's just like the market and safety. Here we understand that there's an option that's the opposite.
So the RISSA matrix. So let's say you're safety first and optionality. So you like the safety, but you like some flexibility. What kind of strategy would be right for you? That would be a time segmentation approach. Marshall and I have both decided we're time segmentation type of individuals. I don't want to commit for a lifetime to an investment strategy or an income strategy for that matter for 20 or 30 years because I think things will evolve. Interest rates might go up, they might go down, investment opportunities may change in the future, the market may go up, the market may go down. I want the opportunity to make changes as time goes on, and I want a lot of that flexibility, and so I want some time segmentation built into there. Now, I have a gentleman that we've worked with from Minnesota for a while now, and he has a charitable remainder trust. So we set up a charitable remainder trust to get him a tax deduction today, satisfy his income needs along the way, leave those dollars to charity in the future. He didn't want to tie himself into any individual strategy. He didn't want an income guarantee on that piece. He didn't want to make that commitment.
Options.
But he wanted a strategy. He wanted a safety first approach. We ended up using cash and a bond ladder combined with equities. So we used a bucket strategy in order to satisfy that need. Now, for other individuals that we work with, they're going to say, I still want some guarantees in the short term. I don't want to use bonds because I want more upside potential. Maybe you want a 5-year, 10-year fixed indexed annuity to satisfy that first leg of income. So I think it's important to say you can still incorporate annuities into the safety first and optionality approach. You're just not annuitizing. You're not tying up everything in annuities. You're just tying up a piece that you're going to spend down over the next few years.
Yeah, 5 to 7 years. It's more of a segmented approach where you're using that safety first approach just on the first leg. But that's opposite to the total return approach, still above the bar here. So we're still focusing more on options and flexibility versus commitment. And that's really what the total return is all about. You've got the flexibility to adjust. Let's say you start out as a 60-40.
You have nothing tied up. There's been zero commitments.
There's
right?
no guarantees, right? So this is the riskiest strategy, but also produces potentially the highest return. I have a client in this bucket. He said, Marshall, I hate annuities. I don't want to tie anything up. I don't like commitment. I want to be flexible. I want to be growth oriented. I love the markets. I understand the markets. And that's just where he falls. But his wife may not feel the same way. So sometimes we have this push and pull effect between spouses as well.
And that's quite often why we land at somewhere in between the probability-based and optionality, or that total return approach versus the income guarantee approach, which puts us in that time segmentation bucket, which I would say is, so we'll go into the odds a little bit here in a minute, but about 20% of individuals fall into that category where they are focused on time segmentation. About 20% are falling into that category, about 30% are falling into the total return approach, and about 35% in the income protection. It's really pretty split. About 30-30 are splitting between total return and income guarantee, and about 20% in time segmentation. I think that's on an individual basis. But if you're meeting with a couple, I think that's why we often end up with the time segmented approach, because we have one that's risk on, one that's risk off, and the negotiation ends up landing us in that time segmentation approach quite often.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we get to that risk wrap quadrant down there. And to me, this was the most difficult to relate to. How would you define those folks that fall into the risk wrap, the people that just can't make a decision?
I think it's a lack of clarity. It's a lack of clarity, or you've been sold something, one of the two, right? I think it's a lack of clarity in what you actually want. Do I want the guarantee? Do I not want the guarantee? Do I want to take the odds? Do I not want to take the odds? Because in here, you're getting probability and you go, hey, I'm okay with commitment. So what's that commitment showing up as? That's showing up as a holding period in the account that you allocated to for that income piece of your strategy. I think most easily to think about this would be a variable annuity. A variable annuity is you're playing the odds of the market, right? You have those dollars inside of this insurance product invested in the market, ETFs, mutual funds. You're hoping they perform well.
Yes.
However, if they don't perform well, I have this fallback plan, which is an income guarantee that I can turn on to create income for the rest of my life if the market doesn't perform.
Right.
Here's the problem with that. You have one vehicle you're trying to accomplish everything with, which means it's not going to do any one thing very efficiently. Think about a duck boat, right?
What's a duck boat?
Yeah, World War II, you see these things that go out in the ocean.
It's kind of like a car, but also you can drive it on,
Yeah, I mean, you might have been on one of these when we were on a cruise once. This was one of the excursions that they offered, right? You go out, you get in this thing, it takes you out in the ocean, glass bottom. Well, you get to see the fish and buzz around a little bit. It's not going very fast, and when you're out there, and you can't hit very many big waves, right? It has to be pretty smooth, otherwise the thing gets capsized. And then you go back on land and you're just putting around on land. There aren't any seat belts. Heck, it's probably a little dangerous. And those things aren't cheap, right? They're accomplishing two different things. They're doing it very expensively and very inefficiently. I think if you fall into this category, we really need to gain more clarity around what exactly is it that you want. I think you're going to operate more efficiently from a financial perspective if you can get yourself in one of those other 3 quadrants: time segmentation, income guarantee, or total return.
Yeah, you want to be more efficient with those dollars to make sure they last a lifetime, right? 30, 40 years. We want to make sure with longevities only increasing, we want to make sure you've got income for your entire life.
So I want to talk a little bit about the odds in these different categories. Okay. So the odds in these different categories, we shared that we have about 35% that are allocated, that have a preference for total return, 35% for income guarantee, and then it's pretty evenly split, around 15, 20% for time segmentation and risk wrap. Risk wrap across the board really is the lowest of all, which I think makes a lot of sense.
Makes sense.
And so you see that distribution stay the same, whether they're 50, 59, whether you're 60, 69, 70 to 80, not retired, retired. You're going to end up with roughly the same segmentation. Where we see a digression in that is when we get to net worth. We find that higher net worth individuals, about 50%, like total return. Lower net worth under $1 million, about 23% prefer total return. It's almost inverse, right? The lower net worth prefers the income guarantee at about 45%. Conversely, the high net worth prefer total return at about 50%, 45% or so. And so it just kind of flips there, right? So then I think you just automatically assume, oh, these people in retirement are like this. They tend to lean towards total return if they have high net worth, and vice versa. And then they introduce this endogeneity factor. It's new word for me, honestly.
I'm glad you pronounced it.
But this is so intriguing to ask the question, are these individuals that are more probability and optionality focused, does that shift? Or are they that way in retirement? That made them high net worth, right? Because I was always probability driven. I was always optionality driven. I was always focused on upside, and that's why I have high net worth today. And I'm not going to change that today. But I was always driven, let's say, by protection, downside protection, and I justified lower returns as a result of that. And now I'm that way today because I've always been that way, right? I think that it's a little stickier than we might actually think.
Yeah, looking at the statistics between those that are retired and not retired, barely changes from that total return approach. You would think a lot more people would be total return pre-retirement, but then once they retired, that they would shift. But really, the percentages on this study,
it's more static.
It looks the same: 33 to 34% versus 35 to 34. I mean, they stay basically right where they are, whether somebody's retired or not.
Yeah, well, and I think there's another caveat to this. Why are so many people total return driven? If that is the leading retirement income strategy that most people want, why is that? Well, Dr. Pfau and Alex here, Kitses, they're arguing that the total return approach is overrepresented by investment professionals and media personalities alike, right? You turn on CNBC, are they talking about income guarantees?
Kramer's talking about stocks, right? He's not talking about income strategies.
No, he wants to. It's much more exciting to talk about stocks than it is to talk about some type of guarantee, right? It's just not exciting to talk about a more conservative approach. So it tends to be overrepresented, and it's become the default strategy for independent advisors under this increasingly popular, as the article points out, AUM model, assets under management.
And I would also say that this is new research also, right? We're in a changing environment where we are learning more. Retirement research wasn't a thing 20 years ago. We're learning more. We're getting new data. And if somebody is not opening up their minds to new studies and new data, they're going to be stuck in their old 60-40 strategy.
Absolutely. And I think the results even indicate, though, the majority still don't want that, right? The majority, roughly 67% of individuals, are looking for strategies that have different degrees of contractual protections, right? That manage their essential expenses throughout retirement. Even at the high net worth levels, if we look at the big picture, still over 50% aren't falling into the total return category. And it would just be naive not to acknowledge that there's some business model concerns here, right? And the way that advisors get compensated, and that's influencing the strategy selection by those firms, by those advisors. And here's where I talk about getting sold the total return piece. The popularity of prepackaged model portfolios means that a total return approach is often sold, not bought, because they're talking about past returns. Look at this model, look at this model, and you're buying the model and then taking income from that model. You're being sold the model, you're not being sold the actual income strategy of total return.
Well, and I think, too, it speaks to the prevalence of just very large firms. So they can't oversee advisors in every nook and cranny of the world, but they can oversee model portfolios, and it may just be a simpler way to run their business, just utilizing, you've got 20 models, have them fill out this questionnaire, have them choose a model, and off we go.
Right. And I want to just put the nail in the coffin with this one. That is a sole focus on one retirement strategy while actively ignoring all the others. That contradicts what it means to be a fiduciary, to act in the client's best interest. And Dr. Pfau argues advisors either need to be prepared to expand the strategies they're offering or more readily turn away clients that don't fit their strategy of choice. I don't know that we're going to see the latter happen there, but we are seeing firms adopt more tools and more strategies because of the demand. If 67% of people don't fall into your traditional investment approach, well, you're going to have to adapt.
And as consumers like you all listening to this podcast learn about these strategies and learn to identify whether an advisor's stuck in one quadrant versus the other, you understand that you need to go to a different advisor to seek different strategies. At least that awareness is going to drive innovation. That awareness is going to drive these firms to provide those solutions. So hopefully we're part of encouraging that movement.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave you with 4 questions to help you really figure out where you land in this. Probability first versus safety first. Are you comfortable with relying on market returns for all of your retirement income success? That means you're probability based. Or do you feel the need for protected sources of retirement income because your investment portfolio may not perform as expected during your retirement? If so, that's safety first. Optionality versus commitment themes. So do you prefer flexible retirement income strategies over retirement income consistency? Optionality. Or are you more commitment driven? Do you value strategies that remove the need to continually revisit your retirement income choices? That means you're commitment driven. So which one are you? And maybe it's time to reassess your strategy and really make sure it's in line with your own personal preferences or values, your mission and purpose in life to elevate the fulfillment that you're getting and maximize your financial return.